Hello, everybody. My name is Olivia, and I'm so glad to welcome all of you to this final gathering of Face to Face with Elephants, our very last series of Living One for 2025. For those of you who don't already know, Living One is the Krulo Center for Nonviolence's webinar series, now in its 6th year. The Krulo Center for Nonviolence is a nonprofit dedicated to generating deep commitment and connection with the world and within ourselves, dissolving divides between human, plant, and animal, mind and body, science and spirit, and self and nature. Through teachings, practice, and community, Krulos catalyzes a shift in how we live, relate, and belong, because healing begins when we remember that we were never apart. This special Living One series, Face to Face with Elephants, has celebrated elephants as individuals with diverse, insightful speakers who describe a particular elephant they have known and the psychological depths they have witnessed and journeyed together. In these unique Living One discussions, we plunge into human and elephant psyches and the transformative journey they experienced when living and connecting beyond species bounds. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are thrilled to welcome David Ebert. David, a retired lawyer, founded Weeping Elephant Project in 2025 as a means of more fully devoting himself to reducing the suffering of elephants. WEP is a continuation and expansion of his work on behalf of captive elephants in the United States over the past decade. Weeping Elephant Project's goals include educating the public to what they are not seeing when they attend circuses, visit zoos, and participate in other events that display and degrade elephants. Through the Weeping Elephant Project's podcast, David seeks to help elephant organizations and advocates reach a wider audience and serve as a resource for those interested in understanding more about the plight of captive elephants and the unseen awfulness to which they're subjected. The podcast features interviews with the extraordinary advocates and organizations pursuing elephant protection to help raise their profile and bring more attention and funding to their remarkable work. David is also the co-founder, president emeritus, and a former board member of Animal Defense Partnership, which provides legal services exclusively to animal protection nonprofits, entirely without charge. ADP now represents 350 plus clients working in the United States, as well as US-based organizations advocating for change in other parts of the world. In 2024, ADP provided $2.1 million in billable legal services to its clients for free. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are all currently on various Indigenous lands. I'm currently on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. This land exists also as a place of trade with other Indigenous communities, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. The Krulo Center for Nonviolence is located on the homelands of the grizzly bear, takelma, daku betete, coyote, coho salmon, golden eagle, and gray wolf. Finally, we ask that all of us participate with full respect and attention to each other in the spirit of peace and wisdom that Living One seeks to foster. Thank you all for joining us for this final live gathering today. I'm very glad to welcome Izzy and David.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And David, it's such an honor to welcome you. And I was wondering if you could start. We've obviously heard about your bio there, but it would be great to hear the sort of first person version of it, how you came to be in connection with elephants. And I guess that connection arose through your work with the Animal Defense Partnership, and it had its own particular generative roots as well. So maybe you could just tell us the story of that journey.
Sure. So I was a lawyer for 33 years. I'm told I was very good at it, but it was very ill-suited. I say that in 33 years, I never had a suit that fit, never felt right. And I mean that literally, but obviously there's another aspect to that. And toward the end of my career, 2016, I tried to do some elephant work or animal work throughout my career as a lawyer. Nothing took it. There was nothing that really I thought I was contributing to. And I did that thing they say you should do. So, what do you have to offer? Well, I can do law stuff. And the thought was, okay, I'll contact some organizations and I'll tell them who I am and what I want to do, and they'll look me up and they'll see all the stuff that, I don't write anything negative about myself, but they'll look all that stuff up and they'll say, okay, he seems to be, a real lawyer, and then and that would be that. What I learned was selling free legal services it's if you want to sell something easily, that would be it. There's nothing easier than selling free legal work. And when we started, we would tell people what we do, and I would have conversations that went, wow, that's fantastic, but I'm not going to be able to afford, I can't pay you that. I don't have money to pay you guys. And I would say, it's free. And there'd be a little pause. And then, yeah, but I don't have any money to pay you. And I'd say, it's free. And it was hard for people to take it in. The thing grew very quickly. And originally I was just going to do some work for some organizations. And then it became, there's no way I can do this work that's coming in, and there's no way I can maintain a law practice while I'm doing this work. So, I mean, I won't go through how we got people to do whatever they did, but that's how it started. I wish I could say I had some grand scheme and I had planned this all out and I had a vision. None of that. I mean, I just thought, you want to contribute, this is what you have to contribute. It grew as Olivia said. Now it's over 400 clients. I'm no longer there. I resigned on excellent terms, but I resigned. So during this time, that was 9 years. So I was there from 2016 to this year, and I wanted to work with elephant organizations, and what I did was I was aggressive in locating people who were doing this work. I would write to every real sanctuary I could find, organizations, and try to make contact with the people who are doing the elephant work. And I met Gay that way, and developed this network of what I call elephant people. I worked on sort of on the side on some captive elephants, and I think it was 100% failure. I learned getting an elephant out of a zoo or circus, that doesn't work. So ADP was fine. They had terrific people in place. There was nothing really left for me to do. It was being done. And I thought about, well, okay, what do you want to do next? And I said, well, it's got to be elephants. And you start thinking about it. And this is where it came from. The elephant work was particularly awful. Learning, the stories of the beings you're trying to rescue, and then the realization that maybe Nosy went to sanctuary. That's one, and there are others that went to sanctuaries, but it's very difficult to do it. I don't think that when I'm done with this answer, I'm going to just go like that, and I'll stop. No. and we go on to the next thing.
Well, I mean, I was going to break in before and say, but why were elephants so important to you? What was it about elephants that sort of struck you with that depth and intensity that drove you to want to dedicate your considerable gifts to those particular beings?
it's always been, I've always felt that's an animal I like. You know, the corny thing, if somebody said, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? And I'd say, well, I'm not smart enough to be an elephant, but I'd like to be, I'd like to be an elephant if I could do it. There was a book, When Elephants Weep, which is where this name comes from, which comes from a quote of somebody in 1700 something that Darwin repeated, and the Indian elephant is sometimes known to weep.
Yeah.
And I
I
just
think
saw the
I've got that
title.
book up there somewhere.
It was just the title, and
Yeah.
it did, you know, you don't know why stuff hits you the way it does, but I mean, I read the book, but you know, some people will say elephants don't weep, and scientists will say they're no tear ducts, and people will say, well, yeah, but and it doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be um, literal. And the more I started learning about what was happening, what was going on, stuff I had no idea about, I looked at videos and I looked at pictures and I read stories, and it's more than shocking. I mean, it's like this can't be.
Yeah.
It can't be that we actually do this. And it was clear to me when I really ADP was in place that okay, I'm going to do something with elephants, and that's that I can't tell you exactly why elephants, but I can tell you it wasn't a choice. You know,
You
this
tell
is what happened.
you in on your website you have an origin story and you relate an experience when you visited the Sheldrake Centre. Could you tell us that story? Because I think that sort of touches at the heart of your
Sure.
connection to elephants.
So I also read Gorillas in the Mist when I was a long time ago. And how do I do that? How do I go and live with the gorillas in the mist? A little unrealistic, but it was, God, could you imagine having that opportunity? And I don't remember how I figured out that you could go to Rwanda and you could see the gorillas in their families, which, uh, which, which, which I did in that was 2016, right after I started ADP. So I went to Rwanda to see the gorillas there. I went to which was life altering. It could be a whole nother discussion. I went back. I went to Uganda the next year to see the elephants there, and it changed it back a little bit. It wasn't really the experience that I had the first time. And you would go on. I hate the word safaris. You know, the guy would take in safaris, and I just wanted to see elephants, and you see elephants, and you know there they are. And I thought, how do I go? How do I go be with elephants? Um, I found Sheldrick. I found out you could live within a couple of minutes of the orphanage there and see the elephants and experience that, which completely turned things upside down. There was one elephant, Shakuro, who was not going to be returned to the wild. There was no way. This elephant was damaged to the point of it ain't going to happen. And so this one elephant, they would permit you to touch. I don't I don't post any of those pictures of touching an elephant because I don't want people to think that that's something that they should be doing. But you know, I have a series of pictures touching that elephant, and it was kind of like that's it. You know, that's all. I was there for a week, um, made some true relationships with the head keeper there and other of the keepers there, and had spent a lot of time with Shakuru. And so the last day we're saying goodbye and we're hugging and I wasn't exactly weeping, but you know we were saying goodbye. And if you were a person, it would be quite obvious to you that we were saying goodbye. Every morning, the elephants would be taken out into the wild, the woods from the orphanage, and they'd walk out in the line. They're walking out this line, and Shakur, who is at the back of the line, turns around and walks over to me. And it didn't register for a second. And they said, what's happening? They're saying goodbye to you. That exploded me. That really was the point at which I thought we know nothing about them. Nothing. You could say it was a coincidence. You could say it just happened that the elephant, you could make up all kinds of reasons, but you could also say that elephant was saying goodbye. And if that elephant's saying goodbye, we don't have a clue what's going on with these beings. But I could tell you, I believe in so many ways they're just way ahead of us, and they certainly do better than us. And that was really when I felt, okay, I can't move to Kenya and live in the elephant orphanage. I was 50, whatever I was, and that wasn't going to work. And realistically, would I really have done it? I don't know. But that moment of that elephant coming over was, as I said, it just crushed me in a positive way. And that's what I was doing elephant work before, but it felt a whole lot different after to do that work.
Such a powerful experience. Thank you. Thank you for telling us. And I don't know how you sort of feel about this. I hear all that you say, and I know, Michelle would say exactly the same profound things about elephants, knowing them a million times better than I do, who have no immediate knowledge of elephants. But I wonder if there ever becomes this risk that we then just end up expanding this animals like us category, or animals better than us. But we then, well, what about an agouti? What about an armadillo? What about? I mean, how wise does an animal need to be for that animal to earn our dedicated efforts? And do you feel that there's any kind of tension in that, where with, for example, the WISE's projects in personhood, do you feel there's any kind of slight tension with that kind of work?
No. No, I mean, not for me. I've had people come, who, if you're doing something positive, they want to find a way to cut that out so they don't feel bad about not doing something positive. So people will say to me, well, what about people? What about people? And I would say, what about people? You want to go work for people? You work for people. This is what I chose to do. And why not these other animals? They don't appeal to me as much. And I think you can throw stuff at me. I think elephants suffer more than many, many other animals. They all suffer in some way if we get a hold of them. But I just think for elephants, what we do is so abhorrent. That's what I wanted to do.
And elephants certainly need and merit to have people such as yourself advocating for them in whatever way. I mean, I don't want to sort of take anything away from you at all. It just is always something that I wonder about.
I appreciate that. And I worked at ADP. I worked with organizations that did all kinds of animals. The frustration there, and one of the reasons I did start Weeping Elephant, was I was one step removed from the animals. So I was representing organizations. It could have been an organization doing anything. We were doing their legal work. it didn't matter that it was animals. And it was, I'm lucky to have met the people that I met and learned the stories that I learned. Um, but it wasn't direct.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, or not direct enough. And I know the value that we were providing, but it was still one step removed. And when we started this, I felt like one of the big issues for fundraising is that we're lawyers. If lawyers sent me a solicitation saying, give me money, I'd say, you're a lawyer. What are you get away from me? And I think that's a real thing for ADP.
But yes, so with weeping elephants, there is this specificity that sits well with your heart, and I wanted to ask you on that about, you mentioned the extreme levels of trauma and suffering that elephants undergo as a result of the way that humans have changed, tortured, destroyed habitats, and poached, hunted, so many horrendous ways. And I get the sense that strikes you, and it's almost like it's not a vicarious trauma. You feel very deeply what you hear about those elephants who are suffering.
Gay could do a much better job on what the elephant is experiencing. But the other side of this is the trauma that people who do this work experience. You see things, if you look, you hear things, you look at pictures, you look at videos, if you can stand it, and it changes you. If it doesn't change you, you wouldn't be doing the work, right? If it doesn't change you, you're not somebody who go into this work. And when you learn what we do, and I didn't know, it's traumatic. And I'm no more devoted or dedicated but I think of these pictures all the time. And I've seen videos from 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that they come to mind before I go to sleep. They come to mind when I wake up. And I think about how this is happening. What was happening in that video is happening as we speak. And it seems overwhelming. And that this is a battle that it's not going to be won in my lifetime. And I feel traumatized by it. And
How do you deal with that?
we were talking beforehand. How do I deal with it? I haven't done a very good job at all, except that trauma enables me to do this work on a level that I wouldn't otherwise be doing this work. But there are people all over the world doing elephant work, mostly unsuccessfully in terms of getting elephants out of where they are. And if you look hard enough, you don't even have to look that hard. It's trauma to the person. The elephants, I've heard the most horrific stories, as everybody in this call has, but I can't tell you about what their experience did to them. We have on our site, we are tracking circus elephants, and we're trying to identify a particular elephant, get their name. We had a campaign, know their names, and tell their stories, which you have to soft pedal. So why do we do this? We do this because I think because they're individuals, and I think people will respond differently if they know this is a being that has a name and a backstory and a horrible, horrible life and horrible stories. And I think that personalizing of elephants, there are plenty of people who say that's not the way you do this stuff. But generic elephants, people, they shake their heads and oh, it's so terrible. They shake their heads. But if it's an individual elephant, this is my thinking. I don't know if it's so. It will land differently on people.
I think you're absolutely right. And when I looked at that part of the website, and I mean, for one thing, I hadn't appreciated how many captive elephants there were in America anyway. I mean, it's just such an astonishingly vast number. And then I saw the names and the stories, and I do think it's an incredibly potent way of sort of bringing home that they're not just dots on a map. They are each is, as you say, an individual with a story and a personality and a background of trauma. So I think that is a very strong way of doing it. And
just to make people aware who may not be aware, we've I was going to say captured every elephant we could find in the U.S. It's 274. Maybe it's 273. I don't, but it's 274, and there are plenty of ones that we don't know about. And the circus elephants, they're so secretive and are so dedicated to not giving out any information or being exposed, you can't get the information, right? If I go to a circus, I don't know who that elephant is. We're trying to figure out which elephants go with the Shrine Circus to this place and what is their name and what who are they? Very difficult to do with circus elephants, and you have to go from region to region because circuses travel much easier with zoos because they're stationary. But it's the same idea to personalize this to it doesn't work to tell people not to go. It doesn't work to yell at them or write stupid, you're this, you're that. And I had such animosity to people who would go to zoos or go to the circus. And my thinking has changed, and they just don't know. I've had smart, aware, sensitive people say, I just read your website. I had no idea. I had no idea. And you got to tell people what's happening.
And telling people in a way that strikes them. And when with that telling of the individual stories, there was some research done. And I can't remember. I think it was quoted in, maybe in either a Daniel Kahneman book or a Jonathan Haidt book. But the research was a picture of a little girl and a little girl looking hungry and appealing and saying this little girl doesn't have any food in her villages, whatever, and how much would you give? And the average amount was whatever, $10. And then they had the little girl and her brother, and they said, these two children are starving and whatever. And still, people were giving, but they'd maybe give $7. Now there were two of them. And then they had, this whole village is really suffering. And look at all these people. There's, 150 people there and they're really suffering. And it went down to like 73 cents. And, that sense of statistical overload of these I can relate to a person.
People don't want to see it. I'm thankful to people who protest outside venues. I couldn't do it. It's just not part of who I am. But my thinking is that's too late. They bought the tickets. They told the kids, the grandparents, we're going to go to the circus. You'll see these elephants, and they're walking by a table, which is trying to convey the extent of the awfulness. They're not turning around.
Well, at that point, they're going to double down because they've had an investment in the ticket. So then psychologically, your inclination is to say, well, you're the idiots because you wouldn't want to admit it. So
yes, and you're being aggressive toward them, even not individually. It's aggressive, and that I don't know that that works. And what we really have developed is don't tell people not to go. Don't tell people to go. You just tell them what's going on,
Mm.
and there will be people who will couldn't care less, but other people, if they know, they're not going to go. And I've had that experience of people, telling me that it changed them when they knew they knew what it was about.
I
Um,
wanted to ask you, David, you chose the title for this session of When Elephants Paint. So yes, could you tell us a little bit about why you particularly chose that, what you wanted to
yes.
bring forward with that idea?
When I heard from you, I had just written or was writing a post about I won't say which one, but one of the awful notoriously awful zoos. They did a post, and they're auctioning off. This is your opportunity. They're auctioning off these paintings that were done by elephants. And these people who they must have an interest in elephants, but they're not buying this thing unless there's some other. These people have no idea what that elephant went through to kneel down, to do these degrading, humiliating acts. They don't paint in the wild. There aren't art stores in the wild. And it's just so frustrating that people see the result. And this applies to a lot of different aspects of elephants as they're perceived. But if you saw it, you wouldn't buy that. You wouldn't buy that painting. And why do we care or want elephants to paint anyway? I mean, what is that about? And it's about a gimmick to raise money where an elephant was tortured to comply. Elephants don't comply like that unless they're tortured. And I won't. I could go into some people, maybe everybody knows what happens, but that when you go to the circus, that's the result of this elephant, being created, being going through the crush, as they call it, to break their spirit, make them compliant in ways that they're unimaginable. But I've seen pictures of it, and people just people just don't know. And would they act differently if they knew? I gotta believe that they would, or else I'm wasting my time.
You mentioned how the sort of the trauma that you suffer from watching all of these examples of cruelty, looking at the pictures, watching the videos as part of the work for understanding what's going on, how that fires you up to do more of the work. And there's kind of an element of it, of that as being almost a, I don't know, like sharpening the steel of the blade of your, determination to sort of go forward like this. But it does sound at the same time as if, you might have expected you to be getting more angry or more combative, but you seem to have moved towards this case of this situation of believing in advocacy and education as a far more important process than this kind of combative stance. What's led you to that?
I don't think the combative stuff, as we say it, excuse me.
That's probably right. I've
I
probably
don't
only
think
just
I
like read
don't
it on
think
a piece of paper.
I haven't seen it work. And I know how I felt when I was a kid and you walk by whatever the protest is. And it's like I just want to walk over to I just want to go to the circus. You're just not spoil this for me. And I understand that. And a part of our thinking was that, again, don't tell them. Part of the thinking was you have to get to those venues where the circuses travel, way before people start buying tickets. Because
Mm.
once they bought tickets, they're not going to go. So we're creating a number of different campaigns to get in that region, whether it's billboards or media or whatever it is, in that region before people start buying tickets. And you're following that. So you're following the Shrine Circus, and everywhere that they go, where there's a billboard. This is sort of a fantasy because we're not quite putting a billboard in every region that circuses go. There's a billboard saying, this is what happens to these elephants. Go, don't go, it's your decision. But this is what happens.
Mm.
And and hopefully that accomplishes something.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think it is minds that need to be changed, not just the sort of making something so well, it's making it illegal would be great as well, but it would also be powerful if people weren't inclined to support things that do seem to have so much cruelty behind them. I know in this country a few years ago, at the Grand National, the big national hunt race, where they're very big fences and quite a lot of horses die. Well, not quite a lot, but every year, probably every 2 years, there's probably a horse will be shot as a result of an extensive injury going through the course. And I mean, horse racing per se leads, as Michelle would know more better than I do, would lead to very negative psychological and physical outcomes for horses, just the stabling and the food and everything. Anyway, the animal arm of Extinction Rebellion, did one of their protests, and I don't know what they chained themselves to the fences or something. And one of my friends was saying, yeah, but they're just not getting any support from doing that because they've people go there to have a day out, and they've ruined people's enjoyment. And at the time, I just thought, I mean, duh. I was just sort of like furious, but it's proven to be the case that there isn't support beyond niche areas for Extinction Rebellion and the like, because people don't want their lives disturbed.
Well, so I'm 30, I don't know, mid-30s, and I'm in my late 20s, and I start doing legal work, and I'm not eating animals. Many of the meetings are at steakhouses and or a place that you can order a nice big steak from, and at the time the vegan or even vegetarian options was potato and a couple pieces of broccoli, and people say, I would love not to eat animals, but I like it too much. um, okay, I don't preach, but if somebody asks me and I in some way try to tell them what's happening here, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know, because then it'll spoil. And that's exactly what you're talking about. That's going to spoil my enjoyment of eating this animal. And and at the time you're a nut. At that time, if you didn't eat steak and whatever else, as a lawyer in Manhattan in a big deal law firm, people couldn't take it in. They didn't want to take it in. They just wanted to say, I would be a vegan, but I like eating steak. Okay,
You don't know where
I
to go
can't
with
do
that.
anything. I can't do anything with that.
No, I saw it in the chat that Michelle asked a question. Michelle, would you up your mic and oh, there you go.
Hi, everyone. No, hi, David. God, this is really, I'm so honored to meet you and listen to your journey and your stories and
Thank you.
how you've gotten where you are, and I was a humane officer for many years and a cruelty investigator, so
Wow.
I was very close to a lot of our DAs and worked a lot of cases, so I have a real affinity as well for what you're going through
I
and
want to
your
say that of all the people who do work for animals, people who do investigations, people who do the work that you were doing, I admire them as much as I can admire a person. That's
ugh,
unbelievably difficult, dangerous, and horrific work. So thank you for doing it.
well, and thank you for being those attorneys that you could go to and who would take your cases, who would push the assaults and the burglaries off to the side and say, "Gimme, gimme, gimme, gimme the animal cases," you know. But what I was curious about too is that I was wondering, you know, because agreed, and I think everybody here knows that as well, that when you are trying to get information on the backgrounds and to kind of get back there with these captive held elephants in circuses, especially, and how they bury information and change information. Do you have any experience or have you any connections or anyone through the USDA? Have they been of any assistance at all? Or I can just tell by your face, it's probably,
I hope nobody here works for the USDA, and I'm sorry
please,
if you do.
please spill.
The uselessness of it is overwhelming.
It's the good old boy network, I think still.
No question. I would, when we were working on a particular elephant, we would do Freedom of Information Act requests for the vet records
Hmm.
and other records. And you also get a record of violations. Some of these places had hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of violations. And what was the consequence? The consequence is there's a sheet that says they had 100 violations. It is maddeningly ineffective. And that's why, laws are great, but you got to enforce them. It's hard to enforce something that happens in the back of a trailer to a circus elephant. But I have I, I have no regard for what they're doing for animals. None.
Yeah. I was just wondering, after even in the last 15 years or so, if you've seen any difference with maybe new officers and or those folks that come out and do inspections, but it sounds like that they're still like in that ingrained that they are industry protectors more than anything, that they protect those industries. And I think because they
And
give them a reason to exist in a lot of ways
that
as
that
well. And they just like, yeah, it's just good. I hate to use that term, but
and
it's still
and
kind
and,
of
and
that.
uh, you know, dovetailing with that is the problem that there are plenty of vets who are willing to lie about the condition of the elephant,
Hmm.
and I mean lie. And you can see that from looking at the elephant and looking at the vet records. It's really difficult, and
Yeah.
it's really difficult.
Thanks. Thanks.
Art,
Thank
I
you.
was wondering about this. You must have colleagues in other countries. I mean, we've got, it will be next week. Sorry about these. An interview with Supana Ganguly, who is talking about freedom information requests and the proceedings for various elephants who now are in a sanctuary. But I think the first one that they filed the freedom information request for, it took 11 years, the process from having that to, and a room full of boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of paperwork. I mean, just just phenomenal, the work that was being done there. But they have got some of these elephants out of the situation. Some of them have been given, but I think some have actually been sort of extracted. And I know, is there not a sort of quite famous case in South America somewhere of a bear who was released? So are other countries functioning better than the situation in the States, and I don't even know what the situation is in the United Kingdom.
Um, there are 12 states in the US that banned circuses doing or any event with live animals. 12. That leaves a lot of other states. I'm told in Europe that there's no such thing as a circus with an elephant.
No, no, we don't have to. We don't have to.
It doesn't happen.
No.
And again, because of enforcement, because of all kinds of reasons, it destroys these beings. It just destroys them, and we keep doing it. And I think other countries do it better. There was a case in South America about personhood. I worked with the Non-Human Rights Project when I first started, and there was one case where I don't remember what they said about personhood, but it was you can't do this to this. We all know it's this sentient, smart, very intelligent, social. You can't do it. Here, cases with Non-Human Rights Project have gone to court and have failed in every instance, except one instance. At Court of Appeals, it's the highest court in New York. One judge wrote a dissent, and everybody,
Yes, I heard.
and everybody, people would ask me, can you write something on why this is so terrible and how it's wrong and I said, we won. I'm sorry, I was not involved in that case, but that's a win. You have somebody in a land where nobody is going to say elephants or chimps or any other animal has personhood. And you have one judge who wrote a dissent saying, I don't really know the answer, but isn't this something we should be looking at?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a huge step forward. And, the next one might not be for 100 years. But at some point, people will look back at this and look at it like, they did what?
Yeah.
How could that have happened?
So what's the future for Weeping Elephants? How do you see this organization evolving?
Well, I'm very, very old, as you can see. So I'm 65.
A 60 is the new 30.
Yeah, for somebody who's in their 40s. I mean, it's not the new 30s. Maybe it's the old 70s. I don't know. I have exceptional people working with me. People who are devoted, have backgrounds working in Asia, living it there with at elephant sanctuaries and training and I have another person who's an exceptional writer. But the woman I'm describing, her name is Danielle Carnahan. It was just pure luck that she responded to an ad that I placed. And I would tell her this. I see her as, if she wants to do it, people do all kinds of things and then don't do it, that she would take this over. And she's better equipped to take this over than I am. So if we can, raise enough money on an ongoing basis and people keep caring about this, unfortunately, this thing certainly can outlive me. And I don't know if it's ever going to be a point at which they're not needed, unfortunately. But that's what I see happening. I see people slowly have their perceptions changed, even if they don't act differently. Just change the perception of what we're doing and who we're doing it to. And we have people contact me all the time to volunteer. And people contact me to work with us. And we're in contact with I built a strong network when I was at ADP, and it continued. And Kay was part of that, and we have discussions. People contact us, we contact them, and it seems to be growing. That may just be because I'm getting emails, but that's what it feels like. And I again, I hope it ends tomorrow. I hope we go out of business tomorrow, but it's going to go on.
Thank you. I wonder if anyone else has any questions for David.
Ask me anything about anything. Doesn't have to do with elephants.
I like your
Anything.
guitars.
Yes, I have guitars. I play guitar. I have never done a Zoom call without somebody
Noticing.
saying
Oh,
something about that.
goodness, I so hate to be so predictable. It's just, yeah, well, there we
No,
are.
those are the people that I love the most.
Oh, well, that's all right then. The predictable people who notice guitars. Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about, do I put a sheet behind me so it looks like a studio? And then I finally decided, if I have nothing else to talk about and I'm silent, somebody will ask about the guitars and give me something to talk about.
Deborah in the chat says not all sanctuaries are created equal. And yes, do you want to speak to that?
Not all sanctuaries are created sanctuaries. And I had a friend, and it's horrific, but I had a friend, a close friend, who know that I do this elephant work, and they went to Thailand, and they sent me a picture of him with his arms around an elephant's trunk. And I took a picture, and he wrote to me, "I hope this is one of the good ones." And I refrained, but it's like, if you're touching an elephant, it's not one of the good ones. And you know what that elephant went through to tolerate you doing that? I didn't do this because, people just, their heads explode. He's not going back. He's not going back to Thailand. And I don't think he would regret having the picture with his arms around an elephant. But there's so many sanctuaries that are not sanctuaries. They're glorified zoos, or they're just tourist attractions. And if you have an elephant, you have elephants you can go and touch and ride at a sanctuary. Well, or people say, well, they were all orphans. It's good that they're here because they were orphans. How did they become orphans? How did that happen? Somebody went out and shot its mother, or somebody separated that calf from its mother and shipped them over here. That's how they became orphans. But they justify it that they're orphans. Okay. They're orphanages for real, like Sheldrick. And they are not, yes, that's a good way of thinking about it. They are not created equally, and many of them are not created as sanctuaries.
I remember doing an interview a couple of years ago with, and I now forget his name, photographer, Swiss guy, and he's made some films. About the most recent one that I saw was about the tiger bone industry, and he wrote or Dale Jameson wrote a book with him, traveling in Africa with him. Anyway, he told me that the next thing that he was interested in working on at the time, that was getting him angry, that was sharpening that trauma sword, was giraffes. And so they were sort of like fencing off giraffes and putting like a treetop walkway, so the people could walk along the treetop walkway and feed the giraffes treats, because obviously the giraffes would have to be hungry enough that they would be willing to take the treats from the people, so that people could have selfies with giraffes. And you just think, my God, if there's any way that money can be made out of animals, don't worry about anything that's to do with their welfare, their well-being, or their life.
That's for sure.
Oh, no.
Although every person who does these things will tell you, but I love them. I love them. I love these elephants who I
know
take kids on rides for 8 hours a day in the sun with no shade. I love that elephant, and no water, or not anywhere near enough water. I'm sorry, I get I get excited about this stuff.
Oh no, I'm not surprised. I don't blame you. I mean, I'm the same friend who was saying don't spoil their day at the Grand National. I mean, talking about racing, and I would say no. It's they'll get stomach ulcers because they're standing in stables for 23 hours a day and they're not getting enough forage, and they shouldn't have shoes and they shouldn't be clipped, and you cut off their whiskers around their mouth and they lose all these sensitive things, and he would go no. I've been to top stable yards, and it's like the finest hotel. They have like 5-star hotels, and you look at those stable yards, and yeah, it is like a 5-star hotel. But the horse doesn't want a 5-star hotel. The horse wants to be out with other horses somewhere where it can run around and eat shitty forage. I mean, it's just
Thinking about this last night, how do you convey what these animals are experiencing? And I don't pretend to know what they're experiencing, but I, try this. You go to a room with nothing, no distractions, no phones, no screens, no books, no guitars, no anything, and just sit there. Just sit there and see how long you can sit there with nothing to do. I lasted 7 minutes. Now, maybe people could last an hour. Maybe people who are much better at doing nothing than I am will last 2 hours. But that's a lifetime for an animal who's in that stall. That's a lifetime of being in a place has nothing to do with them, with nothing to do. Maybe we'll throw in an old tire. Maybe we'll give you for elephants. Maybe we'll give you half deflated beach ball for enrichment. Oh, that's enrichment. That stable thing is that's a perfect example of we pay millions of dollars for these horses and we treat them like gold. And okay, where do they sleep? It's a
look
perfect
how thick the
example.
straw is. Look how thick the straw banks, and the horse has got a nice rug on to keep it warm. And it just, that. But that's not good in a horse book. There was a wonderful documentary, and I can't remember if it was the BBC or Channel 4. It was one of the two, and it was probably about 10 years ago now, maybe more. And it was about horse racing, and the reason that it had been the peg was that it was when horse meat had been discovered in the British food system. So then, oh God, we can't possibly eat horses. Fine to eat a pig or a cow, no problem at all about that. But horses, we can't eat them. So there was this big investigation about the horses, and it turned out that failed race horses, the cheapest way to get rid of your failed race horses is this. So that was part of the investigation, but they were also following these two young horses sort of coming through the system. And one of the horses was, doing stereotypical behavior and was really restless. And every time they were filming this horse, or there were shots of this horse, they used this discordant music, and it was so effective. It was like being inside the head of an animal who is just sort of like can't take it and wired and on edge. And I already thought what I think about horses, but that was actually a sort of like a powerful spur. And it's good that something like that had been in the popular domain, I suppose.
If you know that elephants communicate in part through their feet, and there's an elephant in New Jersey at Six Flags, Joyce, who is dreadful circumstances, very close to a roller coaster.
Oh,
Now, forget about the noise, which must, how are they communicating with each other to the extent they can? And there are only 3 of them when there's a roller coaster. And they had scientists go, and World Animal Protection did a very, very meaningful study about how this affects them. That's the environment. That's the environment that she's in. And what's the big deal? She gets to see people on a roller coaster every 7 minutes or whatever. and she could watch the line of cars coming into we put her where the cars are coming in because that will attract people. And there's no regard. Do they not know? Well, they know now, but nothing's going to change.
It is absolutely heartbreaking. I had this on the idea of the sound through the ground. I'm particularly fond of trees, and if on in the winter in the wind, especially if you lean against the bark, and if you have a tree that's got quite sort of smooth bark, you can hear all the branches clattering through the wood because, of course, the wood is a very good conduit of sound. And I've been thinking about the sounds of the soil. You know how little coral polyps, they hear the sound of a healthy reef and will swim back. So I was thinking about how maybe tree roots can sense the good, here, maybe there is this. So I was thinking about sound in the soil and the sound passing through wood. And then I thought, I wonder if elephants can hear that there are trees. I wonder if there's a difference in the way that the sound is through the ground of being able to say that direction there are going to be there's roots in the ground.
I'll say again, we know nothing. When I was a kid, dogs only saw in black and white. Now dogs see in blue and red. It's different. Well, dogs didn't change. We have no idea, trees, beings, forget about people, what is happening. But I know that doing bad, that's not the way to go.
I just saw that Deborah put, how do I get audio into the chat? So Deborah, if you hold your mouse on the screen, you should see a little microphone come up on the far left at the bottom, and it will have a cross through it. And if you click on it, it should allow you to speak if you wanted to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. David, your heart, I feel your heart. I know exactly where you're at with all that, for what it's worth. But anyway, I was just going to ask, I used to be an English teacher in public schools, and I had got my principal I had written a book about what we're talking about from the elephant's point of view, because as you say, people don't get it, they don't get it. And I have a special rapport and relationship with my elephant friends who, like, I went off the deep end. My friends were like, can we not talk about elephants anymore? But anyway, I got the librarian to put my book in the library at school, as a extra reading kind of a thing. And several students got it. Most of them didn't even read it, but it's all fiction. It's written in fiction, but it's all true. Does that make sense?
What's the name of the book and what's your last name?
Okay, my last name is McPhee, MCF as in Frank, EE. And the book is Through the Eyes of Ernest.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to, you got it. I mean, and you're right, you tell your friends and they go, oh yeah, okay, but then they take the grandkids to the zoo and you're like, what are you doing? So anyway, I really appreciate everything that you said today.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for that work.
Well, I don't mean like I'm nobody. I'm not connected to anybody.
I'm nobody too.
But you know what I mean? Yeah, because it's like it's hard to get it, to get the word out when everybody looks at you like you're crazy.
Yes.
So, but anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah, thank you so much. That was wonderful to hear that your school was receptive as well, and so huge congratulations to you for writing a book. I mean, that's a not insignificant thing to do, and we're all nobodies together, except some nobodies here have written books like you and Gay. So there's book writing nobodies and just nobodies like the rest of us.
Well, I made the story in fiction to make it less threatening also. So that, just if you get a chance, you should read it though, because it's pretty good if I do say so myself.
I will read it. We've been approached by a funder who asked us about doing a children's book about elephants. So I've thought a great deal about, and it's not going to happen by me, but I thought a great deal about how you present this in a way that a kid will look at it and not be traumatized, but just you send the message. So I'm going to read your book, and to have found that balance is a really important thing.
Yes, it is. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if nobody else has any particular questions now, I think we can start to say thank you ever so much, David, for your time and telling us all that you're doing with the organization. And we're all grateful, so grateful for the work that you do, and wish you all the very best for the future. And for Danielle? Is it Danielle who's and
Danielle Carnahan.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, she's, you can read her bio and all that on our site, but I'm telling you, I've hired many, many, many people throughout a law career, and this is an exceptional person.
Wow. That's a huge commendation. We will. Well, I think.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, no, thank you for coming, and we totally admire everything that you're doing, so we appreciate that. And I will hand over to Olivia to say farewell.
Thank you so much, David and Izzy and everybody. This has been so wonderful, and this whole series has been incredible. As you all know, this is our final gathering for live gathering for Face to Face with Elephants, which closes out our live gatherings for 2025 Living One as well. But we will be a week from today at our usual 10 a.m. Pacific time. We will be sending out the pre-recorded conversation between Izzy and Suparna Ganguly, which we've heard wonderful things about and can't wait to see and can't wait to share with all of you. So that will be coming out a week from today at our usual Living One time, but we will not be gathering live again until 2026. So keep an eye on our website.
By the way, I'm available.
Say that again?
I'll be available in 2026. I'm retired, so I have nothing to do for the next 20 years. My calendar is empty.
Great.
Today,
you can come back.
So I'm happy to come back.
Perfect. We'll hopefully have David on again, and we have some wonderful other live speakers lined up, so you guys can check our website and keep an eye on your email. We'll be putting out the schedule and the theme for 2026 very shortly. So something to look forward to. And until then, happy holidays, happy new year. Thank you guys so much for being here with us all year. It's been just amazing. So what a treat, and love to everybody. We'll see you in the new year.